This is just a simple question that I think all Christians should ask themselves in regards to what they believe about salvation, how we're saved. So I just kind of came up with a little thought experiment that you can kind of test your own theology, how you understand salvation, how you believe that you're saved. So just envision this, if you will. So there's two brothers, and they both die. And what happens is one finds himself in heaven, and the other one finds himself in hell. If you go to the guy that's in heaven, you have to ask him, why are you in heaven and your brother's in hell? So from the perspective of synergism, or any type of like Provisionist, Arminian type of theology, or soteriology, basically the realm is that God has either given prevenient grace that enables people to respond correctly to the gospel and believe, or in a more provisionist type thinking, no prevenient grace is needed, and everybody is born with equal ability to respond positively to the gospel and believe. So let's say the guy is a provisionist in heaven. So he would have to say that, well, it's not a matter of I'm not here because of God's grace, so to speak, because I didn't really need that to believe. I could believe on my own. But the question is that, could his brother also believe on his own? And of course the answer is yes. They both could equally believe the gospel on their own, without any help from God at all. And so the difference in heaven is not God here. It's clearly not God here, because God gave equal ability to both brothers to believe. If you're going to say, well, he did a special work, like say he sent preachers more to this brother in heaven than the other brother. But if you say that, then you're instantly in a different, you're kind of in the same boat as where you would lean towards Calvinist, where God did a special work for one that he didn't do for the other, which most people would say, well, that's not fair. You know, how come he did more for this guy than this guy? This guy gets saved because he got more God's attention, if you will, than this guy got. So you have to kind of throw that out as far as, you know, God doing more for one than the other. So the question still remains, what's the difference between this guy in heaven and this guy in hell? We've established it's not God. God has done equal for both. So the difference ultimately has to be the man. He was smarter, I guess, wiser. Basically, God provided, if you will, an insurance policy or a life policy where this guy was smart enough to take God up on his offer. Wise enough, humble enough even. You know, he humbled himself. And instantly you have a problem there. And that is that for all eternity, this guy can say, I was smarter or wiser or humbler than my brother was from myself. Because God didn't give me the humility, because that wouldn't be fair. If he gives me humility, then he should give him humility. And if he had given us both humility, then we would have both believed. If it was God giving humility or a certain thing to me and not to him, then you're right back into what, say, a Calvinist believes, where God does an actual supernatural work in one person, not another. So we can't have that. He did an equal. If he does a work in people, he does it equally for everyone, in a Provisionist worldview or an Arminian. So the difference ultimately cannot be God. It has to be man, which instantly allows for boasting. He can say for all eternity that he was smarter or wiser. There's a song by Rich Mullins, and don't get me wrong, I love Rich Mullins. I have several of his CDs. I can't remember what the song is called, but it might be the chorus, but he says, all right, okay, amen. And in one of the lines he says, one of the verses he says, if we could all just be smart enough to just say yes. And therein lies the key right there. Just be smart enough to say yes. Okay, so we say yes, and we go to heaven. And why are we in heaven? Not because of God. I mean, he died for everyone. He did the same work for everyone. So we're equal. You know, level playing field. The difference between the guy in heaven and the guy in hell is that he was smart enough to say yes. So for all of eternity, he can say, I'm here because I was smart enough to say yes, and he was not smart enough to say yes, which means he can boast. He can boast that the difference between heaven and hell comes from him, which means automatically we know that we must reject that system, because the means by which God saves does not leave room for boasting. Whatever we determine that it is, it cannot be a system that allows for boasting. So any type of synergetic soteriology must be rejected. Provisionism, Arminianism, Pelagianism, which basically is Provisionism, and of course Catholic theology is a synergistic theology, must be rejected because it's something that leaves room for man to boast. What does Ephesians 2:8-9 say? For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, lest anyone should boast. Or some translations say, so that no one can boast. So whatever God did in salvation, a big reason why he did it was to exclude boasting. Like everything he did in the salvation, he had part of his purpose in doing it was to remove the possibility of boasting. So we cannot adopt a system of soteriology that allows for boasting, which is what every other system, except for Reformed theology or Calvinism, include. They include something from the man that made the difference between heaven and hell. So we all have to ask ourselves that question. Does your belief in how you are saved include something that came from you? Did you make the difference? So we all have to ask ourselves that. So I'll just leave that there for now, and hope people think about that when they consider what they believe about things. Hope that helps, and God bless.